what do you do when you're being held back? You're working in an office, in a company, you're a very good performer, you're doing everything that the business requires you to do, you're doing everything that your job description requires you to do. Nevertheless, your boss is holding you back. What do you do? This is a series that we're starting here at the Not Even Wrong podcast, where we want to go a little bit deeper into typical daily business problems, because we're investors. We invest in fundamentally new concepts and engineering practices with large impact. That's the big picture mission of Orange Capital Partners. But when the rubber meets the road here, we're actually investing in people and businesses. And I think it's worth thinking about the really hard things about the hard things, to paraphrase Ben Horowitz, because he, in his book, actually made that point also very well, that investing as a VC, Andreessen Horowitz, is probably the most important VC right now in Silicon Valley. It's the same idea. Look, we're investing in businesses here. We're investing in difficult situation. What is a startup? A startup is a small group of people with focus. It's the least amount of people you need to solve a problem, to paraphrase Peter Thiel. But it's also a bunch of humans doing stuff together, and that creates problems. And thinking about these problems is absolutely important for anybody who's in the business of wealth creation, either as an investor or as an entrepreneur or as an angel investor, whatever you are. You better think about these things. This is the Not Even Wrong podcast. It's February 13th, 2022. This is Krim Delco. It's a Sunday. There's no update. We are down for the year 22.2%. The market's down 7.3%. We're underperforming by 14.9%. So you're an excellent performer. You work hard. You deliver according to your job description. You deliver to the company. You're a difference maker. You do statistically what's required of you, so you hit all the boxes that are important. And nevertheless, somebody's holding you down, the boss. Let's say you have a boss that holds you down. That is a situation that a lot of people are in, because we're humans. People get jealous, for example. I've seen high performers being held down because their superiors are jealous, or they have a grudge against them because they once were the high performers and they were held down, and they want to give it back because they want to say, well, I had it hard, you better have it hard too. Why should I make it easy for you? So there is a lot of reasons, and I think that's probably a podcast on its own, just thinking about what could be the reason for that. You would think theoretically, you have a business, people get hired, and everybody's working towards the same goal, which is success. And then, of course, you're not going to hold back somebody who is successfully contributing to that success. However, here's already the first caveat. Well, what are the goals of people? Let's sit down. What are your goals? For example, let's ask the boss, what is your goal? Is it to increase the market value of the company? Maybe it's not. Maybe the particular person has something else in mind. Maybe it's just to advance the career of their best friends, or his own or her own career at the cost of everybody else. Or maybe somebody wants to sell the company, and you better don't have the highest performance anymore in the company because they will rebel against it, and they own a stake and you want to get rid of them. So what are the incentives here? I think people really always follow their gut instinct and their incentives. Nobody is stupid. Nobody is deliberately trying to undermine themselves or something like that. There's maybe a little bit of that mental illness, but I don't want to go into that. What I want to talk about is the situations where intelligent, good, well-thinking people do the wrong thing, or even maybe it's not wrong. It's not wrong from their perspective, but it's wrong from your perspective. You're doing everything that's necessary. You're investing all the energy, the effort, the passion to deliver, to do what's required of you. You signed up for a certain job, and you're delivering, and then you're being held back. What do you do? Those are the questions. So I've already answered part of that question, which is try to understand what's the incentive structure. What is the goal? So ask your boss, what is your goal here? Because if our goals don't overlap, then everything else we don't need to discuss too much. But if our goals do overlap and you're still holding me back, well, then either I'm doing the wrong thing, or your goal is different, or you're not understanding how to achieve that goal. Maybe we have a different understanding of what the process should be that we have to follow. Maybe that's the problem. You want to increase the market value by having a lot of average people working on projects, and I think it should be a few very star performers. Maybe that's what it is. You know, I believe in the talent density concept of Netflix, and you believe in Walmart. And say, look, I think Walmart is the most successful business because they have these, let's call it, not so well educated workers all over the place, but as an army, they're incredibly powerful. And Netflix says, no, I want to have very high talent density. I'd rather have less people, but then very aggressively go after certain success factors that I can reach with my very high talent density type business. So there's this and that. There's different ways to look at the world. And I think you need to clarify that. So I think I've spoken about this in the past. Most recently, there was an episode where I spoke about scenario planning. And I think this ties into this episode. Scenario planning is just another way to say, okay, what are the scenarios here? What if my boss has different goals? What do I do? If my boss has different goals, it's probably most likely you probably have to leave, because if your goals don't match with theirs, what are you working for? I mean, why even put effort into achieving a goal that somebody else who has more power than you doesn't want to achieve? That to me is completely, that's a reason to quit. You know, this concept, I'm not a quitter, is stupid, because if your goals don't overlap with the organization that you're in, and particularly the people that have more power than you, that can steer the path of the organization, if you don't overlap with them, there's really nothing to do. So however, if you do overlap with them, and then maybe they have alter motives, so they have a goal to increase the market value, but they also want to advance the career of their best friend who happens to be competing with you. If that's the case, you're in a very tough spot, and you can still have a conversation, which is, look, what can you offer me? I'm okay with your friend advancing if that's what you want, and you have the power to do it. Can you offer something to me? Because we still have a common goal here, which is to increase the market value of the company. I can add value because you know I'm a very good performer. So can you maybe tell me what else I could do so I'm not in your way? And if the answer is, well, I have a couple of options, then the problem is solved and everybody's happy. And if the answer is no, there's no way, it's either my way or the highway, then, well, it's the highway. Again, quitting is an option. Quitting is an option. Alternatives are always available. Even in North Korea, there are alternatives. Maybe not as many, but I'm just saying, if we have a vibrant marketplace with a lot of people competing for all kinds of jobs to be done, to paraphrase Clayton Christensen, then there are alternatives. And this is a good thing. So quitting is an option. And I think you should quit if the company that you work in has different goals, if the boss has different goals than you have, or if the person that has power over you and holding you back has alternative motives and is holding you back with not offering you an adequate replacement for the career path that you're trying to achieve with your goals. Now, there's also a third option here, which could be, well, maybe you're doing something wrong. Maybe you think you're a high performer, but maybe you're not. Well, that's actually even easier, because then you can have that conversation. Okay, what is it that you want me to do? What is it I'm doing wrong? Assuming the goals are overlapping and there's no alter motive, and it's simply a question of, well, you're not really doing what I think you should be doing. Okay, fine. What is it you think I should be doing? Oh, well, why don't you do it that way and this way? And hopefully in a few months, the problem is out of the world. Mike Tyson said the fear is not the problem, it's what you do with fear. It is incredibly scary to be in a situation where you get nightmares from being in a situation where you're working super hard, you're performing, doing everything that is required of you and being held back. It's one of the worst situations you could be in. And there's only one worse thing than that, which is not knowing why this is happening. So you have to go out, open your mouth, and be clear about what is going on. You have to have scenario planning in your pocket. So you have to try to anticipate the outcomes of the conversation you're going to have with your superiors that are holding you back. You have to have alternatives You have to understand the outcomes, and then you have to work towards alternatives. And sometimes there are no alternatives, and that's fine. But you need to know this in advance. You cannot be like a deer in a headlight. This is very dangerous. It's not good for your health. It creates anxiety, and it creates mental deformations. It's not good. What's good is to confront your demons, your fears, to understand, look, this is what I want. If you, this is my goal, and this is how I want to achieve it. If you are on board with me, let's work together. You're holding me back. I need to understand why. And if you're not on board with me, I need to understand what my alternatives are. It's not very complicated. A lot of people get caught in this. And when we invest in businesses, when we talk to people, even ourselves, when we are held back sometimes by customers, or we had to, it can happen to you. The purpose of this podcast is to give people a sense for what it feels like to run a hedge fund. Well, welcome to the real world. Let's say you are invested, you have investors, and let's say they're big investors. This happened to us in the past. We had investors that were, let's say, 30% of the fund. And they started to give us a hard time. We kept delivering. We weren't at the 21% CAGR that we are today, but we had a good double-digit CAGR. So meaning our compound annual return was after net, meaning net of fees and all that, was decent. Not a reason to give us a hard time. Nevertheless, we were held back. We were given a hard time. Turns out in that particular case, there was automotive. They were trying to promote people that were closer to them, so they were trying to find a reason to pull their money, and that's fine. Because here's another thing. I don't know if it's the Stockholm syndrome really, but it's some sort of syndrome where if people start holding you back, you start believing that maybe you're doing something wrong. And guess what? Most of the time, it's not you. I've mentioned this before in this particular episode where I said, well, there could be also the case where you're doing things wrong. Well, that's actually very rare. Because again, I've already set up the stage here where I said you're delivering, you're performing, you're doing all the work. You would find feedback much earlier than people would tell you, listen, you're on the wrong path and all that. Being held back is what it really means, held back. So you're doing well, you're a Ferrari, and they're trying to pull the road under you, so you can't really give the full engine power. And don't fall into that trap. Again, this is very dangerous for you as a hedge fund manager. If you want to start a fund, or if you work in a fund, it's even worse. As an employee, you could be exactly in that position. You're delivering, your returns are high, your boss is holding you back. They're not giving you a good bonus, or they're not promoting you and all that stuff. What do you do? Again, scenario planning, have a conversation. These are my goals. What are your goals? What is it you're trying to achieve? And then this is how I am contributing to that goal. Well, what's wrong? Why are you holding me back? Those are very fair questions that you can ask. First, you need to ask yourself, of course, what is my goal and how am I achieving it? And then you need to go out and ask anybody who's important to you, and you will find answers. And if there's no answers, then you also have an answer, which is you have to quit. Again, quitting is, of course, an option. So to summarize, this episode was about a business issue, about the hard things, about the hard things. Or I don't know, I don't remember exactly the title of Ben Horowitz's book. But the point here is that we're trying to assess a difficult situation within the business world. Orange Capital Partners is in the business of investing in people and businesses. So we better have an understanding of typical difficult problems that can be solved, that have to be solved in the business world. The same way that we like to invest in fundamentally new concepts and business practices and engineering practices, we also have to think about a concept or an algorithm of how companies are organized and how people interact with each other. That's part of the algorithm. That's part of the technology. The technology just doesn't grow by itself. It grows with people actually implementing it. And when people are involved together, these things happen. So having an understanding of these things is very useful. We believe that the companies that we invest in all should be scrutinized against the hard things. How do you deal with the hard things? When it's about people, when it's about holding back high performers, when certain managers have ulterior motives. I think The No Rules by Reed Hastings is a fantastic book which covers exactly those types of problems. And it shows how far-reaching this company is if the CEO and founder actually writes a book about these things. And we have a large position in Tesla, And while Elon Musk is not explicitly talking about these things, I think he's very clear about the way he thinks people should be rewarded, people should be incentivized, people should be excited, and passion should be fostered. And this is really what matters. In the end, you're not going to get solutions to hard problems in the engineering world if you don't also think about the solution to the hard problems in the human world. Thank you.